These are Millard Eye reports, which will be found from wherever they are and will be brought to the palm of your hands. Today, hills and mountains, rivers and bridges were crossed just to give you insights of a man with 16 wives. His name is Ernesto Muhenuchi Kapinga, 75 years of age, living in Iringtitu, Njombe, Tanzania. In our quest in Njombe, we managed to reach our destination, which lies 10 kilometers away from the main road. The man doesn't have any educational history, however, he is proud of his farming abilities, which are what helps to feed his family.
Moja ya vitu ambavyo vimenifanya nije kwako ni ukubwa wa familia yako.
Ndiyo.
Tulivutiwa sana kusikia na kutamani kujua.
Ndiyo.
Una wake wangapi kwanza?
Nilikuwa na wake, mara kwanza nilikuwa na wake 20.
I previously had 20 wives. As time went by, some refused to live with me, so I separated from 2. Being left with 18, unfortunately 2 of them died. I'm now left with 16 wives.
The conversation continued with him mentioning that he married his first wife in 1961. They added more wives in the interval of 5 to 10 years.
Imekuwaje idadi hii kubwa imeongezeka?
My father was a very noble man, especially to the people in his community. He was not a selfish man. He fed and never refused to give anything to anyone in his community. Since there were a few born out of his family, he wanted me to have a big clan, and that is what pushed me to have many wives.
Ulikuwa unaongeza mke kila baada ya muda gani?
It would probably take me around 10 years before adding another wife. Because my father had told me I could marry however many wives I wanted up until the time I decided that it was enough.
According to Ernest, his father was still alive when he married his first wife. But unfortunately, he passed away in 1974. And by this time, he had already married 9 wives.
Kwa hiyo wanawake ambao wewe uliwaoa kwa kuwaona, ukawafata ukawapenda, walikuwa wangapi?
I physically spotted and married all my wives, including some of my wife's siblings.
This started off in the 1980s, where he'd spot them when the siblings visited the wives. He would go to their parents and officiated the marriages. He added by saying he has married a total of 7 of his in-laws.
Imetufanya watu wengi tuwe na maswali sana kwa sababu kikawaida tumezoea watu kwa wenzetu wa Islam wanaruhusiwa wake 4. Wewe umekuwa na wake sasa hivi 16 unasema na walikuwa 20.
Walikuwa 20.
Hakujawahi kutokea mtafaruku wowote?
No, there aren't any problems between them. There comes a time when there is nothing to eat at one of my wife's houses. They go to the next door to ask for assistance and would gladly help one another. Whether there is no flour to cook with or meat to eat, they would cook for each other. All the kids can also visit each other in different houses, and my wives could even cook for each other's distant relatives.
From his words, Ernest states that with regards to jealousy or confrontation between his wives, there has never been such incidents, that all his wives are super supportive as well as very accommodating to one another, together with their children. He added by saying that each of his wives has a house and they all live with their children. Ernest was then asked when he had his first child. He answered by saying his first child was born in 1962, who is unfortunately deceased, so as his second child. He then added by saying that his wives have an estimate of 6 to 10 children each. Unfortunately, the number of children he lost amounts to approximately 40.
Na kwa ujumla sasa hivi una watoto wangapi?
I have a total of 104 children. The first being 56 years of age and the last born being 4 months old.
Wake zako hawa wote 16 kwa sasa au 20 uliokuwa nao kwa wakati wote?
Ndio walikuwa wamesha.
Unawakumbuka majina?
Nawakumbuka.
Wote? Unaweza kuwataja sasa hivi?
Naweza kuwataja.
Hebu nitajie.
Wa kwanza alikuwa anaitwa.
Impressively, Ernest said that he could name all of his wives. Started off the list with his first, named Delfina, continued by mentioning Lydia, Otodora, Constancia, Maria, Juliana, Beatrice, and Upendo consecutively, with the rest to follow. He added by saying because of tradition, he inherited his deceased brother's wife and his 4 children. He married his last wife in 2012 and so far has no interest of adding any other person as a wife. He does, however, consider having more children. He then says, having many wives was never part of my plan. I was just following the scripture when the Almighty spoke about filling up the world.
Sa swali kubwa ni kwamba umewezaje kumudu kuwa na wake 16 ambao sasa hivi unao? Pengine tunafahamu mahitaji ya mume na mke, ratiba yako ikoje kwa mwezi kwa jumla?
Mimi anapofika nyumbani,
before marrying them, I usually paint a picture of how the situation at my household truly is and ask whether they are ready to live with their co-wives. I usually set the record straight when they are at their parents' houses.
Masharti gani ambayo lazima uwaambie kabla hujaoa?
Mimi masharti ya kuongea tu mimi.
I usually tell them that I have a certain set of rules. For example, the fact that we must farm together, harvest together, as well as share the food amongst each other.
Uliwahi kuplan kusema mimi nataka tu niwe na watoto fulani wangapi? Yani idadi fulani au wake fulani?
Mimi sikuplan, mimi nilifuata maandiko.
None of this was planned. I just followed the scripture where the Almighty said that you should go and procreate. That is what I did.
With regards to feeding his family, he says that he provides maize, beans, cassava, as well as bananas, which he plants and harvests from his farms. According to Ernest, he has the ability to feed and take care of his family. When he was asked whether he could name all of his 104 children, he said he could remember only a few and not the rest. However, when he sees one of them on the road, he would know that the child belongs to a certain mother. Mr. Ernest then speaks on how he communicates with his children. He states that he holds family meetings and when needed, he would send letters as well as make phone calls. According to Ernest, the year 2015 was the last time he had to worry about paying for school fees, since the introduction of the late President Magufuli's free education initiative. He says that he has approximately 30 of his kids still attending pre-primary and secondary school, so the initiative has really helped him. He says that without it, he wouldn't have been able to afford taking them to school. Later in the interview, he mentions that he has some of his kids employed as teachers as well as nurses.
Chako ambacho unakipenda sana nini?
I prefer ugali, specifically made from maize as well as cassava flour. I like cooked bananas too.
Asubuhi
I usually have cassavas as well as tea for breakfast.
Umeshawahi kula chips?
No, I've never had fries before.
Na kwa mfano watoto wakiugua inakuwaje?
Watoto wakiugua mimi.
When the children get sick, I would sell sacks of maize harvested as well as bananas.
Na hospitali haiko mbali na hapa?
Hospitali haiko mbali.
The hospital is not far from here, especially since they built a new one that is near, even though it had not started to operate yet. Previously, we had to travel to nearby village in order to get to the hospital.
Na uhakika kuna watoto wako wengine pia wameolewa?
Ndio.
I have wedded off 37 of my children.
Kuna kitu gani ambacho mwanaume anatakiwa kukifanya pale ambapo anataka kumuoa mtoto wako wa kike?
Firstly, they usually meet at the church. Then my daughter must seek approval from mother before coming to me for the final say. Once the mother approves, it would assure me that my daughter is in safe hands. That was how I was raised.
Sa una mpango wa kuongeza watoto?
Mimi na mpango wa kuongeza.
Yes, I plan on having more children.
As advice to the younger generation, he says that there is no advantage to lying or cheating, and to have a successful marriage, he thinks he should be used as an example because he believes he is doing a great job at running his household. Lastly, he was asked about how many wives he married officially. He said that it was just one, and the rest of the marriages were based on mutual agreements.
Na wakati ulipokuwa unataka kuongeza mke mwingine,
nilikuwa nawaambia.
Ulikuwa unaongea na waliotangulia?
Jamani, nataka.
Whenever I wanted to marry another woman, they would give me a go ahead. They have never had a problem with me adding another wife.
Iliwahi kutokea ukakataliwa pengine?
Hapana.
No. They have never refused. Maybe if they start it now.
The main challenge currently faced by Mr. Ernest is lack of electricity.